Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to your September horoscopes for your zodiac sign. Now, this is how you're going to read for your sign. You're going to read first for your rising sign. If you do not know your rising sign, you want to go on a free 99 website like AstroSeek or astro.com. You punch in your data, your date of birth, location, and time, and then you will see your rising sign, which is also the ascendant. Then you're going to read for your ascendant sign. This is how I do the monthly forecasts because this will give you a bigger picture of where the transits are going through your own personal houses. Now, as a disclaimer, like always, this is based on just your rising sign. There's other things to take into consideration, like if you have any natal placements in and around the degrees that I mention. Another thing to keep in mind is that not all transits will impact you because they just won't. Like, that's why you want to look at the degree of the transit and if you have any placements around that specific transit. Try not to get into this mindset of, is this good or bad? Because only you can perceive of something as good or bad. Something that might be a challenging aspect for me or its transit might actually be something that ends up being a blessing in disguise later on. So I try not to say what is good or bad. I'll say, this is an auspicious day to start something. This might bring blessings down the road. This is a challenging transit that you might need to lean into, or you might be triggered on this day. That's how I try to do the forecast so that you are prepared and you're not blindsided by certain things that might happen. You also have to take into consideration your profection year, so your time lord, different like midlife transits. You know, there's people going through their Saturn return right now, which is a different experience than if you weren't going through a Saturn return. Some people are going through their midlife transits. They're going through their simultaneous Pluto and Neptune square. So there's all these different layers to take into consideration when you listen to this. And like I said, collectively, 2025, we're all going through massive changes. We're all being asked to show up in different ways to really work through our own bullshit, to heal our trauma. And then individually, we can narrow that down to certain things that we are going to be focusing on in our own transits. So, if you want to learn more about your own specific natal chart, I am teaching Astrology 101. I opened up my star school that starts October 6th. It's a 12-week class. We meet for 2 hours every Monday between 12 and 2 p.m. And I'm going to teach you how to read your natal chart so that when you listen to the transits and you remember, oh, I have a 5-degree sun in Aries. So then next year, the Saturn and Neptune conjunction in Aries is going to impact me. Stuff like that. It's really important to understand your natal chart when you listen to these transits, because like I said, not all transits are going to impact you. And also not all transits impact people the same way. So that is one way you can go deeper with me. And I mean, obviously you're listening to this. So if you are a Patreon member, you're getting this at the top of the month. If you want to become a Patreon member so that you could receive this in the beginning of the month versus like when it's, we're already going into mid-month, then you can be in the North Node. I believe I call it the North Node tier. It's $10 a month. And you can also listen to the monthly forecast that I do with Stephanie Campos, which we go day by day, every single day of the month. In these monthly transits, I only really talk about the ones that would impact your rising sign, the most important ones. Obviously, the 2 lunations and any of your chart rulers, your planetary ruler changing signs or making significant aspects. If you want to come along with me every week in the forecast where I break it down day by day, that's free 99 on YouTube. But if you want to support my work, you can join the first tier of my Patreon, which you just pay $5. I think it's $5.55 a month to support my work. So that is how to engage with the content of the monthly forecasts. I obviously can't answer all of the questions you have if you are not a Patreon member. This is another benefit of being a member because if you're not a Patreon member and you're watching it in the general public, you're already catching this forecast in like mid-month when I've already, spent a lot of time putting this out for my Patreon members. So they get first priority. And then if you're watching just the clips of it, just know that I post the clips for marketing purposes, but there's a whole month of transits that give context to your experience. Because there were a couple of people that just watched the clips last month and they were like, yeah, but I'm a Libra rising and this Venus Cancer conjunction in my 10th house is not auspicious for me. I just got fired from my job. But if you had watched the full month forecast, I said that Venus and Jupiter, just because they're both benefics, doesn't mean that it's all going to be like rainbows and butterflies. So those are the disclaimers. Thank you so much for being here and thank you so much for supporting my work. Let's get to your sign. Hello, Capricorn rising. Welcome to your September forecast. Now, your chart ruler, Saturn, will re enter the sign of Pisces on September 1st. So, that is the big news for you this month. There are actually 5 planets that will change signs this month. Mercury will change from Virgo to Libra. Then the sun will go from Virgo to Libra. Essentially, this is the equinox. And then Mars will change signs from Libra to Scorpio. But let's just begin from the beginning. September 1st, Saturn retrograde re-enters the sign of Pisces. So your chart ruler goes back into your 3rd house. The 3rd house is a cadent house, like the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th. These are the houses about your proximity and knowledge. So the 3rd house is the one closest to you. This is what you do know. This is the house of the goddess. This is the house of rituals, your altar, your speech. What you say has power. This is also your neighborhood, the closest people to you, your siblings, cousins, aunties, and uncles. So because Saturn is your chart ruler, you would have had a lot of focus in the home sector from, I would say, May to September, since the 4th house is your Aries house. And now it's going back into your Pisces house to finish up this story that you've been going through for the last 3 years. So some Capricorn risings might have gotten, you've been more disciplined around these areas, as I mentioned, the significations of the 3rd house. Saturn wants 3 things. Saturn wants a plan, Saturn wants structure, Saturn wants discipline. So you might have had that type of energy in your 3rd house topics for the last 3 years. And then when Saturn moved into your 4th house in May, the focus went more towards your home, your family, your parents, your home of origin. Topics around your safety and security. I think I mentioned this in last month's horoscope. I asked the Capricorn risings if y'all moved in the last 2 years, because a lot of you would have been going through eclipses in the 4th and 10th houses. Some of you might have pivoted your career and as a result of that moved homes or moved away from home, moved closer to home. And maybe some of you had some struggles around your relationships with your siblings, cousins, or extended family, or you became a little distant with people in your neighborhood. So, yeah, that is September 1st. On September 2nd, Mercury ingresses into the sign of Virgo. Now, this is your ninth house of higher education, spirituality, philosophy. This is foreign lands and foreign travel. This is also the house of astrology. This is the house of God, essentially. So, this is the opposite of the third house, which is the house of the goddess. I think a lot of Capricorn risings might have been traveling since the sun entered Virgo, since this is the house of traveling. Saturn going into the third. This is also a house of travel. Mercury coming here, it might make you more curious about different modalities of spirituality. This might make you curious about um, different schools of thought. You might actually be like literally traveling. Um, but ultimately, having the third and ninth houses and these activations like this, also the eclipses here, this is about kind of broadening what it is that you currently know and expanding your knowledge base. Some Capricorn risings might have gone back to school, or you might have been taking a course, or just really expanding, your breadth of knowledge in a specific area of your life. Okay, so on September 6th, Uranus stations retrograde at 1 degree of Gemini. Now, this is the area of your life where we talk about your work environment, your coworkers, pets. This is your daily rituals and habits that support your life. The key for the sixth house is to work smarter, not harder, because this is the area of our life where we could become basically, for lack of a better word, enslaved to capitalism, enslaved to a job because of our lack of trust and surrendering. So, this is why in astrology, the sixth house can become the house of bad fortune because it is in a quincunx to the first house. It doesn't witness you, Capricorn rising. So when Uranus is in the sixth house, this is something I went through the last 8 years with Uranus going through my sixth house. I really had to start to consider my health habits. I had to not just like physical health, right? This had to also do with my mental health. I had to take better care of my body. And I mean, one would say as you get older, you have to do that anyway. But this is the area of your life where you really want to pay attention to the way that you're treating your body, mind, and spirit. So Uranus is here for a little glimpse as it's going retrograde. It's going to go back into your fifth house in Taurus, but you would have gotten a glimpse as to what this transit would have been about. This is about bringing change and some kind of disruption around the way you think about your work and the things you do on a day-to-day basis to support your life. Capricorn risings are productive people. So I think really understanding why you're doing something. Is this from a place of insecurity? Is this coming from a place that you want to work and you want to do things with intention for a greater purpose, because you also have Pluto in Aquarius in your second house. So you want to make sure that everything that you do has a greater purpose and not just doing things because you can. On September 7th, there's a total lunar eclipse at 2:08 p.m. Eastern Time at 15 degrees of Pisces. Now, this again is your third house. So there's an ending here. Something is coming to a completion as a lunar eclipse is a full moon. What I like about this lunation is that it's a north node eclipse. So, as a result of something being released or something ending, this is ultimately going to be beneficial for you. Something lucky will come out of this in the end. I always say with eclipses, you just never know how something will have a massive ending or massive beginning. But because this is between your third and ninth houses, these are the cadent houses, like I mentioned. This has to do with proximity and knowledge, and they are in a harmonious relationship to you. The third house is in a sextile, and the ninth house is in a trine to you. So, whatever this is, this could be like a releasing of an old thought or a habit around the rituals or the places you go to read every day. Maybe you're cutting back on your social media. Maybe you're not going to read maybe you're going to get interested in reading other kinds of books. But ultimately, the ruler of this moon is ruled by Jupiter in Cancer in your seventh house of one on one partnerships. And the moon and Jupiter are in a mutual reception, linking the topics of the third to the seventh. So, for some reason, this completion in your third and ninth houses has to also do with your partnerships, your relationships. Um, like I said, I think a lot of Virgo risings are moving or they're just more mobile, that you might be traveling more, you might be more curious. And as a result of that, you might meet new people. You know, Jupiter expands whatever house it enters. And so, Jupiter being in your partnership house, you might be um, meeting just like interesting people who are emotionally fulfilling to you, who you feel like are soulmate type people energy. Jupiter also rules your 12th house of foreign lands as well. Um, so, again, this theme of traveling, this theme of getting out there, being curious, learning something different. But out of the two eclipses in September, this one is, I would say, I don't want to say good or bad, but because of that mutual reception to Jupiter, there is some support here. And I think if something does leave your life, the whole purpose of the North Node being in Pisces is to trust and surrender that this is going to be a blessing in disguise. All right. So on September 13th, Mercury in Virgo will conjunct the sun in Virgo at 20 degrees. And this is a Kazemi. And I really like this. If there was a day where you wanted to learn something or you wanted to, like, for example, learn astrology, I am teaching astrology 101, how to read your natal chart. This is like that energy because Mercury is the planet of communication, commerce, and it's the planet for the astrologers because Mercury interprets the signs and symbols, right? And then the sun, Mercury going into the heart of the sun. Mercury is being blessed in the throne room. Mercury is exalted in Virgo. This is in the house of God. The sun has its joy here. So, yeah, you just might be like having this moment of, I want to learn astrology. I want to learn these different types of spiritual modalities. I want to really learn I'm thinking of like earthbound things like Virgo, like herbalism. I want to learn about healing. I want to learn about plant medicines. Whatever it is, this day is one that you want to pay attention to. And if you have anything that you want to launch, September 13th is really lovely. On September 18th, Mercury will ingress into the sign of Libra. That is your 10th house. So you just had Mars here traveling through your sky. So you might have just been more active in terms of making your career, your work, whatever you're publicly known for, more of a thing. Mars rules your 11th house of community. You might have been really active in community events, and Mars also rules your fourth house of home. Some of y'all, like I said, might have been moving, or you're just bringing your work home, or, because the ruler of the fourth is in the 10th. You might be doing things in your home, like working from home, for example. Excuse me. Mercury rules your ninth and your sixth. Again, cadent houses. Again, I think there's something tied to career, learning more, being committed to learning more, so that you can expand your knowledge base in order for you to maybe ask for more money or, increase your knowledge base so that um, you can have a breadth of information, if that makes sense. because Mercury at the top of the chart is also a good time to, you know, communicate with a boss, communicate with somebody, whoever does your promotions or your raises. This is the person you want to talk to. Okay. On September 19th, Venus will ingress into Virgo. Again, ninth house topics. So Virgo season is always your ninth house. Libra season is always your 10th house. That's the top of your chart. So the focus goes from learning, even divination. I know that's more of a third house thing, but it also could be the ninth house. You just get really interested in your belief systems and like faith. And then all of that energy goes to the 10th. But Venus is in its fall in Virgo. And Venus and Virgo are people who, I know a lot of Venus and Virgos who are into health, who are into the wellness industry, who are into fashion and estheticians. Because if you think about it, it's Venus that is about beauty, it's about self worth and value. It is in a sign that's more mercurial and paying attention to the detail. It's a sign that deals with editing and making things perfect. So, one thing that could be a little caveat to Venus and Virgo is this idea of perfectionism, having to do things way over your, trying to like overcompensate for maybe feelings of insecurity to be perfect, for example. And that is the shadow aspect of a Virgo, because Virgos are always like, this could be better, this could be done better. But however, having Venus in the ninth house, which is in a trine to you, I think is ultimately really lovely because Venus is still a benefic. Again, Venus rules your 10th house of Libra, but it also rules your fifth house of romance, sex, fun, and pleasure. So if there are Capricorn risings that can go on a trip, you might meet somebody. Um, you might just really start to say, like, let me romanticize my life a little bit more. Let me have a little bit more fun. Let me do the things that give me pleasure. The first, fifth, and ninth houses in Vedic astrology are the Dharma houses. These are the houses of purpose, and our desires are breadcrumbs towards our purpose. So I think this is a really nice season. Virgo season to Libra season is a really nice season for Capricorn risings because all of these planets are very supportive to you. Obviously, there will be caveats. On September 21st, there is a solar eclipse in your Virgo house. This happens at 3:54 p.m. Eastern time. It's at 29 degrees. So this is the anaretic degree. This is a solar eclipse. However, it's a south node eclipse. So there is something being released here. There is something that is being purged and released from your life. But it's a new moon. However, it's a little bit more challenging because your chart ruler is opposing this new moon. Saturn is retrograde in Pisces. So you might be confronted with like a no. Saturn is the planet of restriction. So just be careful around this time too. If you're traveling, double check your documents. I try not to travel during eclipse seasons, but if you absolutely have to, just make sure that you, I mean, now with everything going on around the borders, because Saturn deals with borders, I would just be really careful getting across the borders of any countries. I would be careful, maybe even deleting some social media apps if you're really active on social media, speaking out against all the atrocities that are happening in this world. Just because the ruler of this lunation is Mercury in Libra in your 10th house. and it has that the new moon has its opposition to Saturn. It just seems like for Capricorn risings who are, I would say, active on social media, they might check your socials and say, hey, we need to not let you in into this border, for example. And this happens a lot to people, especially countries where there is conflict going on in the world, if you know what I mean. That is one warning. But again, something new is trying to emerge from the ninth house. If there are any Capricorn risings that are interested in teaching, this could just mean that maybe you're pivoting and you decide, that you don't want to teach anymore, or you want to teach. Whatever it is, something around your knowledge and how you disseminate information is changing in these eclipses. Okay. On September 22nd, Mars will ingress into Scorpio, which is your 11th house. And I really like this because Mars is in its domicile in the sign of Scorpio. So there's a lot of action happening in your 11th house, which is in a sextile to you. So you might feel more motivated during this time. You might feel like you want to get out there and advocate for something, which is interesting because the 11th house is such a public house, but Scorpio energy is it moves very stealthily. Like if there was an animal that I can describe a Mars and Scorpio, it is an orca whale. They're very strategic. They work in a pack. They work under the water. If you've ever watched a pack of orca whales strategically trying to kill a seal, this is the type of energy that I'm talking about. So you could use this energy in a very strategic way if you're going to do any direct actions, if you're going to do community organizing. It's more strategic, more underground kind of work. I don't know why I'm bringing all of this up for Capricorn risings. There must be a lot of Capricorn risings that I'm reading for who are activists. Thank you for your work. The I would be careful though of the shadow aspects of Mars and Scorpio, which is obsession, being too fixated, and the conscious Scorpios are able to channel that energy into direct action and a focused, fixed, determined action. Okay, on the same day, the sun will ingress into Libra. This is the fall equinox. Again, this is your 10th house. So every Libra season, you're focused on your public persona, what you're birthing into this world, what you are known for, your career, if you resonate with that. And yeah, some of you just might be more focused on what do you want to do for the long term? Like that's a very Capricorn word, right? What are my plans for the future? Where do I see myself in 5 years? Now, I would say the second week of September is really lovely. There's a lot of trines between Mercury, Uranus, Pluto. There's that cazimi, and it's a nice reprieve between the eclipses. I would say September is like a very mixed bag of like the eclipses, obviously. And then we have that 1 week in the middle of September that is really sweet. And then at the end of September, we have a grand air trine between your 10th house of Libra, your second house of your finances and personal income, and your 6th house of Gemini. So there is something going on here that are all related, right, to your personal finances, your work environment, your daily habits and routines, and your work, your career, and how they all support each other and how they all speak to each other in a grand air trine. Then on September 24th, Mars and Scorpio will square Pluto in Aquarius. So this is a little challenging, I would say, something that you are trying to accomplish your long-term goal, maybe even something related to home, right? Because Mars also rules your fourth house of home, is in a conflict aspect. A square is a 90-degree angle, it's conflict. You're coming up to a challenge point with your finances. Maybe something that you've desired to do, maybe a goal of yours is you're realizing it's not going to happen with the finances that you currently have. And so as a result of that, you kind of have to weigh the option of, is this the time to do this, or do I have to wait a little bit? Now, this could also bring up some trigger points because Mars in Scorpio, Mars has this cutting away effect. And the Scorpio, right? I think of like the tail, the pincer. When that squares Pluto, which is the god of the underworld, and the second house is the gate of Hades, this could bring up some past traumas. This could bring up some wounding. This could also bring up financial trauma and scarcity mentality and poverty consciousness, something that you might have been working on, you know? Um, and this might be something that has come up for you since Pluto has entered your second house since 2023, and now it's retrograde, right? So I would recommend doing some work around like your relationship to money, your relationship to poverty consciousness and scarcity mentality. I did a slideshow on my Instagram. It it's the slideshow I think on the new moon in Virgo, but the last, I think second to last or third to last slides, I reposted this video of this guy talking about debt as vibration. So many people get stuck in this loop of debt because they've tied their financial trauma to money. And when you start doing healing work and trauma work and spiritual like work, you start to realize your true worth is not actually tied to money or what you do. And I know that might be challenging for a Capricorn rising to understand sometimes because Capricorn is an earth sign. It's very embodied, it's very earth-based depending on your Saturn, right? But the fact that Saturn is retrograde, your chart ruler, I think you already are contemplating your relationship to reality. What is real? Saturn also rules your second house of Aquarius, your personal finances. So I would say go easy on yourself this month. Um, and really like journal about this, seek resources. I like to recommend people read The Soul of Money. She's a white lady, but she brings up very good points about like the spirit and energy of money. So that could be a great resource for you towards the end of the month. But that is your September. I wish you all the luck. Please be safe, and I will see you next month. Bye.